All right, let's talk about network states. This is like one of my favorite topics ever. Is the idea that we could make a new class of governmental structures. So I'll give you some interesting ideas to start with. Okay, so like before the printing press, every effective form of government. So I would say, so when you make a government, governments have to walk a line between being effective, fast, efficient, powerful, and being fair. So representing the interests of the governed, and on the left side of like highly efficient, you have authoritarian structure. So it's all kings. It's all kings and emperors and dictatorial chieftains. And this is built deep into human psychology. Like deep in our mammalian psychology, we just assume that we live in some sort of hierarchical pyramid, and the guy on top of the pyramid has life and death power over us. God damn it. Why did it cut out? What's this thing doing? I'm gonna take it off the charger. Is that gonna work? There it goes. Yeah, I don't know. I've got I'm using my phone as my camera, and that was causing me problems. So anyways, I was saying that since before the printing press, for most of human history, humans, when we think about how we're governed, we just assume that there's someone on top of it all, that there's a pyramid, there's someone on top of the pyramid with life and death power, and if you say bad things that they don't like, or if you challenge that person's power, you're dead, you know? And so it was that way for most of human history, and that walked the line between effective and fast and fair. But that was largely because our communication tools were not very good. We had spoken language, we had some written stuff, but you need a long time to copy written documents. And then we get the printing press. So that's like our first big step up in communication technology. Mass distributed communication is the printing press. So all of a sudden people felt like they could, create and distribute their ideas better. And so the new Nash equilibrium of effective government became representative republics. So, but now your problem with representative republic is still time of communication. Like, so instead of like sending letters back and forth between Congress and the local jurisdictions where the people are governed, you send a guy. So you send a guy. So this group of 10,000 people sends a guy to represent their interests. Those people get together and they make all their decisions. They come back and tell you what decisions they made. And this worked a little bit better. It's like, you think of a government as like, you think of all the people in a country as being like neurons in a brain. And your intelligence is both a function of how effective your individual nodes are, but also it's related to just how many nodes there are, how interconnected, how good is your sensor network. And even dumb people, they work as part of the sensor network. Like if you were trying to keep a place safe and you set up a camera surveillance network, generally the more cameras, the more visibility you have into what's going on all around the area that you're surveilling, the more that you're going to know, and then you're limited by your ability to process all that information. But anyways, so I digress. The internet was invented, 40 years ago, and gave us a step function change in our communication abilities. Now, communication is Twitter. It is instant. It is global. I think in a lot of ways, we're feeling the stress of our governmental structures not keeping up with our communication tools. I think I think in the back of our minds, or even in the front of our minds in some cases, like for Balaji and some of the networks state guys, um, this idea that there is a new form of government out there is very palpable. And maybe it doesn't even have different principles, doesn't have a lot of super different principles, just more like operational differences between what we know of the representative republic and what might come after. I think digital republics could just have, well, I guess what Balaji and some of these thinkers would call network states. I guess you could call them like digital republics. I think of them as almost the same thing, but with different tools and different electoral processes. One of the things that inspired me was thinking about, I had this idea about transitive delegation. So an election is direct delegation, right? So if I'm a member of a congressional district or whatever, and I vote for a guy, I had to learn his name, I had to hear all this marketing, and maybe I listened to two people talk, maybe I didn't, maybe I just chose along with my party letter when voting day came. This is like a very compressed, low information way to choose a representative. Like I don't know any politician that has ever had influence over my life, and I never got to really build that relationship in any sort of way that's meaningful to people. You know, humans, we can only store information of about 150 useful relationships, and after that, we start to like lose information. So it seems to me that human governance naturally probably works pretty well in tribal settings, like up to like those Dunbar-esque numbers, like 100 and 150 people. And after that, it probably gets kind of bad. I think politics shows that, you know, we choose Donald Trump as the president, or we choose whoever as a senator, and we don't know these people. So instead, what I think would be a great system would be a transitive way of choosing our representatives. So amongst the people who I know directly, and I'm only able to choose from the people I know directly, I choose who I trust to represent me in certain issues. And then we could use software to keep track of these connections, these choices. We could maybe even do this in a blockchain-like format where it's more transparent and visible. And then you would let like whoever I trust, like they go through the same process, but they can't choose me because I chose them. And then they choose who they trust, and on and on and on. And trust bubbles up, and it has to be like in an acyclic graph. You know, software could keep track and make sure that there were no cycles. That, you know, like I delegate to person A, delegates to B, delegates to C, who delegates back to me, and then no one's actually representing us. Can't do that. But these are very minimal problems that can be solved easily in software. But let's say that everyone did this system. Everyone did this. And so there was no money spent on elections. Elections were more like social media follows, that you could give out that power and you could take it back. Or you could choose to be a politician yourself. You could choose to represent yourself, or represent everyone that follows you, and participate directly in that country's legislative process. But if you choose to be involved in the issues, you have to be involved in all the issues until you delegate again. And maybe there's some type of pay for that as well. Like if you have 1 million people collectively, you know, transitively that follow you, and if you do the math on that type of system, it doesn't actually even take that many levels of followership before 1 million people trust you, and you represent a significant amount of the will of the public. And we could actually make government quite efficient in this way, where like you could have a relatively small number of people who had this very temporary type of power just based on them being transitively followed by a bunch of people. And in times of high coherence, you could have a relatively small number of people who represent the will of everyone that kind of make all the decisions. And then every time they make a decision, everyone gets a notification on their My Government app or whatever. And if at any point someone down the line using your vote makes a decision you don't agree with, well, maybe you either revoke that delegation and you claw back a little bit of power from that person, or you change your delegation to someone else, and now your vote bubbles up to someone else who you think is going to make better decisions. But even right there, I think there's an insight into how like a network state could and should work, that there's different things we could do to save on the processes of how government works and how we run society. And I think these are very like interesting ideas, and I think I was more fascinated by these concepts like 7-8 years ago, before AI was really pumping. Now I think there's like a new player that's entered the chat where, like, one, I think if AI were not a thing, a new governmental structure that had like technology and databases at its backbone to, fuck paper voting. Paper voting is super stupid. Why aren't we using our technology tools to innovate even better forms of low friction, more representative government that distributes power more evenly and more temporarily? It's a huge problem that when people get into political office, they've got all these years where they make all these behind closed doors decisions. Some of them are public, but once they're in office, they've collected all those millions of dollars and donors, and they've gotten through this popularity contest, and then they just go do whatever they think will kind of maybe help their constituents, mostly benefit them, mostly get them reelected, get them more donors the next cycle so they can continue their political career. Like the amount of a politician's day and work that actually goes into making good decisions for the people is like, it's the donate to charity slice of what you would do with $1 million. And it's too permanent. Like even a couple of years is too permanent of a way to hold on to power. Like I think the way things should work is that issues should rise up, become viral, voices should come out. People have a good idea, they go viral through these like social media algorithms, and then people should be able to get behind good ideas and empower certain individuals to go and make certain decisions for society. And then as soon as that person starts trying to put their hand out and take from society, well, people naturally don't like that politically. And so you would claw back their followers. And now all of a sudden, they just wouldn't have power anymore, right? So you would change a lot of the negative incentives of political systems. You would go from a system where people get into power and then they're mostly just concerned with not rocking the boat too much and getting reelected. Whereas if the only thing you could do to hold on to power was make decisions that people agreed with, you're not going to be getting out on CNN or getting out in the public eye trying to stir up controversy over issues that have nothing to do with your job. So many of the issues that we actually make decisions on, that we actually make voting decisions on, are issues that politicians never get a chance to act on. We never get a chance to act on changing abortion or things around abortion, or changing, I don't know, what's another issue that people get super riled up about? Around wars, around supporting foreign countries, around supporting Israel, around supporting Ukraine. All the discussions around these issues are like behind closed doors. We don't get anywhere near them. We can't actually do anything to meaningfully claw back funding around these, because the people that are making those decisions have a form of semi-permanent power, or like, they at least just have to not piss us off or whatever enough to like actually rally all these resources around like not getting them elected next time. It's too permanent of a form of power. Like we should be able to pull people out of their chairs basically like the next day, the day after they make a bad decision. Our form of government should allow that. power should be a very fragile thing that you almost can't hold on to. That's how I think, network states. I think there's this huge opportunity to create startup cities and innovate around the structure of government, and begin to move us toward a new. I think Singapore was interesting in that they took what they learned from governmental structures around the world, and they were very practical about solving a lot of problems of other governmental structures. But I think we can do even more. I think technology, graph databases of tracking like votership and whatever, and blockchains to make this stuff trustworthy. So at any given point, you can go and look at voting history or delegation graphs, and you can see that how you think it works is how it works, and make a very transparent technologically based system. Because once people tie each other together through a governmental system, what is a government? It's basically a thing that rules over people in a geographical area. People that didn't choose to be together, they're just kind of thrown together, and now they have to deconflict their interests. This is actually one of the problems I notice with a lot of the network state dialogues. Like the network state dialogues that I've seen, they seem to be very movement based. They seem to be about getting like-minded, optimistic people together to choose to be together in the same space and like form communities on the internet, and then go and then eventually one day hopefully go and be part of a geography and create a productive state. I don't think this is a functional idea, and I think it leaves a lot out. It's sort of like, it's like saying you're going to form a political party and then you're going to move to a place where only your political party lives, and then you hope that controversy never comes up. But controversy is going to happen like on day one, like within 3 weeks, as soon as we're figuring out which company we're going to pay to go and pick up the trash for everyone. There's going to be controversy. There's going to be 3 or 4 different competing companies, and then God forbid we have to choose to attack another country or for some reason, or or just make decisions on the defense budget. That's going to fracture your movement again. So you're going to need a robust system that can gain the trust of the citizenry, get them to believe that even if they don't agree with the decisions that they're being bound to, that they at least can agree with the rules. They at least think the rules aren't awful. And they will allow themselves to be bound to a decision they don't agree with in the short term or even the medium term or whatever, because they believe in the overall structure of the system. They believe they have a voice. They believe they can get involved. And that's what I think next generation governmental structures, network states should have at their digital republics should have. They should have, screw one person, one vote. There should be a way that you can just guarantee that you have the right to be involved in the legislative process. You may not have very much influence unless a lot of people follow you, and then you have all their votes when you make a decision or propose an idea. But you always have the right to be involved in the process and be one more on every single decision. Or you can delegate. And I think the best society would actually be one where it's very cheap to run, where there's one guy that everyone agrees with. They can take away his power at any moment. They can fracture his power at any second. But as long as he makes decisions that everyone's on board with, and things seem fair, and things are moving along great, and things seem just, and they're not getting into wars, and they're not stirring up controversy, they just let that guy do his thing, and that guy would just. But unfortunately, in the future, that's probably going to be an AI. It's probably not going to be a person. But we might voluntarily delegate our power to that robot, and the robot might just gaslight us into believing that its way is the right way, and I think that's actually very highly likely. Anyways, I just wanted to make an impassioned video about network state stuff, because I think a lot about this, and this is really actually if I could choose one thing to make a living around, and just talk about it every day and make software. I'll actually talk about a couple of software projects that I've put together around this topic. But man, I would love to find people that like these ideas and want to talk about them and do podcasts around the idea, or fucking make a country, you know? I think I'm this close to moving around the world and going to Singapore and being part of the network state thing, even though I love where I live more than I would like being in Singapore. But anyways, I feel like this was a good little clip. Let's see what people think about it.